And there we are. We are officially live. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Coffee and a Conversation. I have Larry Kuperman with us again this evening. And we will be talking about what are we talking about tonight, Larry?
Nationalism, the other god that failed.
Yes. So, Larry is with us this evening. Larry has been with us before on Coffee and Conversation, actually quite a few times, and we love having him here every single time. And real quick, for all of you just joining, please hit the like and subscribe button. And also, this month for the subscription is I've got a sub count for 15. So, and if we get 15, then chat gets to do a poll and pick the color of my next hair. And no, nothing is out of off limits for that. So just to let you all know that. So, all right, with that, I will get right into it. And how are you doing today, Larry?
I'm doing great. I have been on before, and thank you for having me on again. As you know, I have a kind of trademark. You know, I have a T-shirt for every occasion. You probably can't read the one that I'm wearing today, but it's a poem. Tonight we're going to be talking a lot about commitment and betrayal. So I wanted to wear something appropriate for this. This is a poem, one of my favorites, from Frederick Gustav Emil Martin Niemöller, a Lutheran pastor. In 1933, he was among the people that welcomed Adolf Hitler to power. From 1938 to 1945, he was a resident of first the Sachsenhausen and then the Dachau concentration camps. In 1945, he was liberated by the U.S. Army, but this is perhaps his most famous work, and there are a million variations on this, but they're all good. First, they came for the communists, and I did not speak out because I was not a communist. Then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak out for me. So with that, kind of heavy one, but with that, I'll start getting into the presentation itself. So nationalism, the other god that failed. I had a specific inspiration for this. Not long ago, I was talking to our friend, Red, about the book, The God That Failed, which is about why communism failed a whole generation. But I wanted to make a point that all isms, including and perhaps especially nationalism, eventually eat their own. And that isn't my opinion, that's history. A note about this presentation and about all of my presentations, I publish in quotes everything that I write, post it on the internet, and I include links to where I get my information from. So please feel free to download or to copy it. But I urge you to follow some of the links. You know what they say: trust, but verify.
Absolutely.
So why do we care at this time? So why did I pick nationalism? So nationalism is what unites the people, carrying the Israeli flag, with a man wearing the Camp Auschwitz shirt on January 6th at the storming of the nation's capital. Couple of articles that I do link to. One is where the pictures are from, insurrection and anti-Semitism blend at the Capitol riots. And the other one is entitled How the Israeli Flag Became a Symbol for White Nationalists. Quoting from that article, indeed, parts of the U.S. right use the Jewish state as a canvas to project their own fantasies of nationalist chauvinism, Christian redemption, white pride, and anti-Semitic conspiracism. And none of these roles, in fact, turn out well for Jews, for Palestinians, or for the prospects of a just peace in the Middle East. So, I think that this is a topic that's of contemporary interest. I'm an old teacher, so pardon me if I go into teaching mode. But so,
good.
Patriotism versus nationalism. What do we mean by that, right? Patriotism is love for or devotion to one's country, and nationalism, is defined as the exalting one nation above all others, and placing primary emphasis on promotion of its culture and interests as opposed to those of other nations or supranational groups. So I'm going to ask you, is America really the greatest country, and by what measure? And for everyone, have you all been to all the other countries? Nationalism is not only rising in America, but in Canada, in India, in Myanmar. By the way, the streets in Myanmar ran red with blood this week. Words that I never thought I would say. Buddhist nationalists, and it has terrible consequences, and it always does. And this is a kind of historical overview of that. This was a quote that I had given again in my discussion with Red. Doc Rivers is now the coach of the Philadelphia 76ers, previously last with the Los Angeles Clippers, and he said this: we keep loving this country, and this country does not love us back. And I'm gonna share a thought with you. It is impossible for a country to love you back. You can love your country all you want, but a country is a thing. It can't love you.
Right.
So who am I to talk about this? Hey, I thought you were just a video game guy. So in 2018, I was interviewed among people interviewed by an online magazine, PC Games In, about the Holocaust and the presentation of the Holocaust in video games. And it's funny, Twitter is full of comments that did not age well. I think everybody knows some of those. I was really pleased with what I said those years ago. Seemed to age well for me. I started off by asking, do you show the persecution of the Roma, the LGBTQ, other minorities that suffered as well as Jews? Take the story of the Treblinka concentration camp. It was second only to Auschwitz in the number of Jews that were killed there. People were packed so tightly into the gas chambers that when the doors opened, they were still often standing, dead on their feet, mothers still holding children. How do you begin to capture the horror of something like that in the concentration camps? The interesting story about Treblinka, and it was one that was really important in my life, was that in 1943, it was one of the few places where there was a successful uprising. The prisoners stole rifles, burned the buildings, and about 200 of them escaped. Many were recaptured and the camp resumed operations, but at least two of the survivors that made it out would later commit suicide because they could not cope with the guilt of having survived. So how do you make that into a video game, right? The story is kind of depressing, but this is something that I've been talking about for a number of years. The stories of nationalism, and I tell this all the time. We often make history into something boring, and it should not be. It should be compelling stories of the men and the women that lived it, real people that, when told correctly, are things that we can relate to. So these are the stories of men and women who believed in nationalism or other isms, who dedicated their lives to the cause, and you can put that in quotes, but were ultimately betrayed. We can make countries into ideals, we can love it, but a country will always remain a thing, a place, incapable of returning that love, and that is true of all countries. So let me just also add, I'm not sure who all is in the audience tonight, but if anyone in here is still a part of any extremist movement, this is for you. These are things that you should know, whether that movement is left or right, communist, fascist, libertarian. Sooner or later, somebody's going to ask you to sacrifice, to take one for the team. And the ones in charge, they will regretfully tell you that they can't actually be there with you. So sorry. But, if things go badly, please feel free to leave them a voicemail. Again, that's my opinion, but when you get done with this, you ask yourself if it doesn't ring true.
Right.
So on to the stories. You probably don't know this guy, but he should really be more famous. In 1918, he won the Nobel Prize for inventing the Haber process. Europe, all of Europe was facing a tremendous famine. And the reason was because the soil had been exhausted of nutrients, particularly of nitrogen, right? Plants need the nitrogen to grow, but that diminishes the amount that's in the soil. And Fritz Haber figured out a way to extract nitrogen from the air. He saved Europe from a famine, and it was such a revolutionary process that they said about Haber that he had made bread from air. That same guy that saved Europe from a famine was also the father of chemical warfare. Yes.
Wow.
The Second Battle of Ypres lasted over a month. On the first night in April, the German troops attacked after discharging 200 tons of chlorine gas. When the gas was inhaled by the French and some English troops, it seared their lungs, which caused their lungs to discharge fluid. And one description was that they witnessed men drowning in a dry field on a sunny day. Now, in fairness to Haber and to other German chemists that were part of the same team, James Franck, Gustav Hertz, Otto Hahn, the French also were exploring using chemical weapons, so it was who got there first. Famously, when asked about how the same guy that could save thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of lives from famine could also be responsible for deadly warfare, for creating weapons of mass destruction, Haber said during peacetime a scientist belongs to the world, but during wartime he belongs to his country. So World War I ends, and Haber, along with Albert Einstein, helped establish the Kaiser Wilhelm Institute in Berlin. Chemistry and physics were all considered part of the same field. So Max Planck, Werner Heisenberg, Max von Laue, and many others that were famous in chemistry and physics came out of that institution. Fritz Haber also helped found a state-controlled company called Degisch that created a variant of hydrogen cyanide marketed as Zyklon gas. If you know Zyklon gas, that was the gas that was used in the concentration camps and the gas chambers.
Right.
The irony is that in 1933, Haber, along with 130 other Jewish scientists, were dismissed. So Haber had come from a Jewish family in what was Prussia then, is now part of Poland. And members of his family were killed in concentration camps using the gas that he had helped develop. He'd had a really terrible rest of his life. He was Hitler actually reached out to him and told him that because of his war record and because he had converted, that he might be allowed to stay in Germany, but all of his assistants and his fellows, all of the Jewish fellows that were working with him, had to leave. And Haber left. He first traveled to England and was not welcomed there. In fact, one of the famous scientists there refused to shake Haber's hand because of the gas warfare thing. He traveled around to other countries. He was on his way to Palestine, to what is now Israel, when he died of heart failure. So, I mean, he literally died of a broken heart. Betrayed. Boy, if you know anybody that's in any of either the NSM, most especially the Ottowaffen, the Proud Boys, they should really know about Ernst Röhm. Rome was a personal friend of Hitler's. He was the leader of the SA of the brown shirts. It was Rome that organized the first Nuremberg rally. He led the Munich beer hall putsch. And again, like I said, he was a personal friend of Hitler's. Well, once Hitler became chancellor of Germany, Rome and the other brown shirts fell into disfavor of the German military and in particular of the SS. Goebbels himself was the one that gave the orders for what became known as the Rome Putsch, otherwise known as the Night of the Long Knives.
Yep.
They raided the SA headquarters. Goebbels telephoned Goering with a code word, colibri, or hummingbird. They arrived in force. Surprise arrests began. One SA officer was found in bed with an 18-year-old male SA troop leader. Hitler ordered them taken outside immediately and shot. Without any evidence, the SA were accused of a plot to overthrow Hitler's government, and Hitler called it the worst treachery in world history. After being arrested, Rome was confined to a cell and was given a gun with one bullet. And he was encouraged to do the right thing, to kill himself. When the door opened again, SS Brigade Führer Theodor Eich, who would later become commandant of the Dachau concentration camp, and Obersturmenführer Michael Lippert were there. They had given him 10 minutes. He had not killed himself. They returned to the cell, and Rome was defiant. He stood there with his shirt open, and he said to them, "If I am to be killed, let Adolf do it himself." The two officers looked at each other, and Hitler couldn't be bothered, so I shot him.
Wow.
Told you guys this is going to be dark. It's stories of betrayal. All right. Well, you know, one might look at these two things and say, okay, Haber and Rome. Well, that was Nazi Germany. That was then, but that kind of thing wouldn't happen in America. So, do you guys know about Robert Oppenheimer, the head of the Manhattan Project?
Absolutely.
So, you know, father of the atomic bomb. He opposed nuclear proliferation. Almost all of the scientists did. He certainly opposed the development of the hydrogen bomb after the Second World War ended. In 1954, the FBI dug up his past associations with the Communist Party, which included his having dated a woman who was a communist. Oppenheimer's security clearance was pulled. For the next 9 years, he was forbidden to work on the kind of nuclear physics that he loved. But in 1963, JFK awarded him, and LBJ would present him. JFK awarded him with the Enrico Fermi Award, but didn't get a chance to do it because he was assassinated. It was LBJ that did actually the presentation. So Oppenheimer's famous quote is, you know, "I am become death, the destroyer of worlds." He didn't actually say that at the Trinity test. He quoted that many years later in a television broadcast, but it sounded good, so they kind of kept it. So Oppenheimer and pretty much every scientist that was part of the Manhattan Project actually opposed the use of the bomb on civilian targets. They felt that there was no need to bomb a city like Hiroshima or Nagasaki, both of which cities were chosen because they had not had much damage during World War II. They thought that they could do the same, get the same impact by dropping it, you know, on some deserted island. But the night of August 6, 1945, when the first bomb was dropped on Hiroshima, Oppenheimer took the stage at Los Alamos, and he clasped his hands above his head, you know, like a prize fighter. And he said that he expressed regret that the bomb was not ready in time for use against Germany. However, that was August. By October, when they realized the damage that the bomb had done, Oppenheimer asked for and was granted a meeting with President Truman. At that meeting, Oppenheimer said that he felt that he had blood on his hands. That did not sit well with Truman, who angrily ended the meeting saying, "I don't want to see that son of a bitch in this office ever again." I'm not using profanity.
Wow.
I'm just quoting the former president of the United States.
You're
Um,
good.
so J. Edgar Hoover had Oppenheimer under investigation from 1940 on. The guy that who was devoting his time to saving American lives, had his phone tapped, his mail was opened. He had dated a girl with communist associations, and that acted against him. But it was the testimony of Edward Teller, who would go on to be the father of the H-bomb, that sealed his fate. This is what Teller said about Oppenheimer. He had seen Oppenheimer act in a way which was, for me, exceedingly hard to understand. That was the totality of the evidence that was presented against Robert Oppenheimer.
Wait, hold on. You said that the totality was that. So in other words, there
All it
wasn't
was that
anything.
there was nothing. There was never any proof that Oppenheimer had been an active member of the Communist Party, or that he had acted in any way that was against the interests of the United States.
Now, if I'm not mistaken, there was something called, I believe they called it the Red Scare
Absolutely.
back in that time, correct? Where the communism was one of the like the most evil thing that anyone could ever think of, as more evil than the devil himself, if I remember correctly from the history books.
You're spot on with that, and ironically, a lot of the people that were tagged with that were Jews.
Okay.
It's amazing the people that they called out as communists, particularly from Hollywood. It included people like Edward G. Robinson, Little Caesar, right?
Right.
And Danny Kaye, the comedian.
Wait, really?
Yeah.
Wow. So, help me understand, Larry. Was there any reason given then or even now why they targeted members
The people
of the
that they
Jewish
did?
faith as communists? Why were they so quick to label?
So again, if communism is the god that failed, and I was talking about that at the very beginning. I'm not sure if you caught that part. A lot of Jews supported communism, and we'll talk a little bit about that. I've got a slide coming up on that, but
Sure.
But then you had the famous trial of the Rosenbergs, who were supposed to have given the atomic bomb secrets to the Russians.
Gotcha.
So that was a lot of it. And that said, it's been a principle of American justice that you're innocent until proven guilty, but not so much.
Right.
I don't know if anybody has any familiarity with Daniel Ellsberg, or if this name means anything. He's a Detroit boy. He's arguably America's greatest soldier. He goes to a Detroit Country Day. He gets a scholarship to Harvard, graduates summa cum laude. He spends a year in England at Cambridge, then back to Harvard for a graduate degree. All right, so this guy's like brilliant. So what does he do? 1954, he enlists in the Marine Corps. Serves until 1957, when he's honorably discharged as a first lieutenant. He joins the Rand Corporation as a strategic analyst. In 1964, he joins the Pentagon and volunteers for and spends 2 years in Vietnam. And we'll talk about where it goes from there. But so here he is, this great officer, and he's doing intelligence work. He's one of the CIA guys. One night, he's the guy that gets the telex thing about an incident that was taking place between the USS Maddox and 3 North Vietnamese PT boats. The incident became known as the Gulf of Tonkin. So first we said we were in international waters, and then it turns out from the ship's log we were actually less than 3 miles off the shore. The Maddox was a spy vessel. We were in Vietnamese territorial waters. The PT boats came out to investigate. The Maddox opened fire on them. The next day, other boats came out to try to pick up the survivors from the PT boats, and the Maddox again reported that as another unprovoked attack. And those are the two lies that that got us into Vietnam. We passed the War Act resolution that basically suspended, the need for a declaration of war that gave the president autonomy, which it's on the basis of that explains how we're still in Afghanistan and Iraq. So Ellsberg's like, the super soldier and absolutely loyal, absolutely a patriot. And then one day he goes to hear a young man giving a speech on a campus, I think at Georgetown. It was at a university in D.C. But he goes to hear a young man giving a speech about why that young man is resisting the draft and going to go to jail. And Ellsberg's mind is kind of blown by this. He says he started crying about at that time. And this is a quote of his. It was no more a civil war after 1955 or 1960 than it had been during the U.S.-supported French attempt at colonial reconquest. A war in which one side was entirely equipped and paid by a foreign power, which dictated the nature of the local regime in its own interest, was not a civil war. To say that we had interfered in what is really a civil war, as most American academic writers and even liberal critics of the war do to this day, simply screened a more painful reality, and was as much a myth as the earlier official one of aggression from the North. In terms of the UN Charter and our own avowed ideals, it was a war of foreign aggression, American aggression. So Ellsberg was charged as an officer. I mean, this is what I said charged. I don't mean criminal charges. I mean, this was his duty. He was collating all of this documentation about the Vietnam War, all of these papers that had been secret and that were still classified as secret. He leaked them to the press. It became known as the Pentagon Papers. So Ellsberg gets brought up on charges, for the crime of telling the truth, and the plots of the United States government against this former patriot are just not to be believed. So Ellsberg was, as you guys might imagine, conflicted over what he was doing. Mm-hmm. So he was seeing a psychiatrist. The United States government, broke into the psychiatrist's office and accessed his records. When they found out that Ellsberg was, deeply conflicted about this, they hatched a plan, which they did not do, but they hatched a plan to dose him with LSD before he went on trial.
Oh wow!
It didn't come off like most of the stuff in the Nixon years. It was kind of half-assed, but there you go. All right, so we talked about Germany and America and betrayals of people, right? These people started off believing one thing and then ended up getting screwed by the country that they had loved. It's not just this, and this goes to the question about why the Jews and the reputation. So Lev Davidovich Bronstein, Davidovich, by the way, means his father's name was David. Lev Davidovich Bronstein is born into a wealthy Jewish family, and he became a Marxist. Sent to Siberia, he escapes and flees to London, where he meets and befriends Lenin. After the Russian Revolution, he held many positions, including the commissar of the military. In 1924, after Lenin's death, Stalin strips Trotsky of all his titles and exiles him. But he was not willing to leave him alone. In 1940, he was assassinated at his home in Mexico. So Trotsky was one of the many communists that came from a wealthy family. that dedicated his life to helping the poor and the downtrodden. You may not agree with the way he did it, but that was what he dedicated his life to. And by the way, if you have any interest in this, Che Guevara graduated from medical school, and Fidel Castro was a lawyer. So, all right, remember that when Trotsky was born in Russia, you could still own serfs.
Mm-hmm.
Let that go in for a minute. When you bought a piece of land, you also bought the people that were living on that land.
Oh,
Wait a minute. When you bought the land, you also bought the people living on the land.
Yep.
okay.
Wow.
Yeah. So that said, Trotsky and Lenin and Stalin, Russian Revolution, right? The USSR/Russia never becomes the workers' paradise, which the revolution was supposed to achieve. When Stalin came to power, things actually went from bad to worse. The revolution betrayed Trotsky. Trotsky knew it was coming. He had fled to Mexico. He was living, a life of fear. All the shadows were coming for him. On June 8th, 1940, he wrote an article entitled "Stalin Seeks My Death." On August 20th, 1940, a Spanish-born NKVD agent, Ramon Mercader, attacks the 61-year-old communist in his home, striking him with an ice axe. The blow did not kill Trotsky immediately, and Trotsky grappled with his attacker, broke Mercader's hand. He also spat on him. By the way, when it comes my turn to go, that's the way I want to go out. But the next day, he succumbed to his injuries. Trotsky's last words were, "I will not survive this attack. Stalin has finally accomplished the tasks that he attempted unsuccessfully before."
Wow.
These communists were all alumni of the Siberian labor camps. These dreadful places in Siberia. And there's a family tie-in of that. In 1908, my grandfather, Yankel Kuperman, came to the United States, fleeing from a Siberian labor camp. In 1911, my father and my grandmother were able to come over to the United States, and that's how my family got here. So we've looked at Germany, we've looked at America, and we've looked at Russia. Let's talk a little bit about China. Lin Biao, his family name is Lin. He's arguably the most important military figure in the Chinese Civil War. He led the People's Liberation Army into Beijing. In 1966, he was named Mao's successor. In 1971, his plane crashed in Mongolia in what became known as the Lin Biao incident, and he was named a traitor. The Cultural Revolution in China. It's a series of purges that spanned the period from 1966 to 1976. The death toll estimates vary from only a few hundreds of thousands to maybe 20 million. Depends on who you count. The brutality was unimaginable. The Guangxi massacre alone saw the executions of between 100,000 and 150,000 people, with documented incidents of cannibalism. Cannibalism.
Wow.
I mean, you want to talk about taking it to the max.
Right.
No kidding.
Hey, what's eating you? Oh, sorry about that. Okay.
Nice one.
So Mao had stepped back from power, allowing less radical leadership for what was supposed to be the Great Leap Forward. So China was going to become a modern country. And when that failed spectacularly, resulting in the Great Chinese Famine, among other events, Mao returned to power, blaming Lin Biao and bourgeoisie elements that had to be cleansed.
Wow.
So, thank you for your patience and for putting up with me through this. But my summary: nationalism, imperialism, communism all have demonstrated histories of eating their own, and in at least one case, literally.
Right.
Any movement or ism, when taken to the extreme, always results in pain and suffering. What they don't tell recruits to extremism is that sooner or later, you will be the one suffering.
Yeah.
So, the final part of my slide is do nothing to your neighbor that you would not want your neighbor to do to you. That is the whole of the law. The rest is commentary.
I like that quote.
Huh.
I really
Thank you.
like that quote.
I can't end it on too heavy a note because it has been a heavy presentation. So let me give you a quote from Woody Allen from a time when he was funny and a lot less creepy.
Right.
This is the last line of Sleeper. So then, what do you believe in? Sex and death. Two things that come once in my lifetime. But at least after death, you're not nauseous.
Wow.
So,
Huh.
thank you very much.
Oh, thank
Love
you.
Love it.
So,
Wow.
so let me tell you again why isms are always going to fail, and why nationalism fails, among other things. And Red, this was something that we started to discuss early on, but if you'll bear with me, will you be my
Sure.
my subject from the audience? I need a subject from the
Yeah.
audience. So
Yeah. Why not?
so imagine Red and I are walking down the street. Philadelphia work for you?
Sure.
We're walking down the street in Philadelphia, and I hear Red clear his throat. He's gonna expectorate. He's gonna cough up a loogie, as we used to say. And I see Red's about to spit on the sidewalk, and I yell, "Wait! Don't spit on the sidewalk. Here, spit on this American flag." So after Red gets done beating the crap out of me, I ask you to stand back from that and think about that for a minute. An American flag is a symbol. A symbol has no meaning of its own.
Right.
Right? It only means what we imbue it to mean.
Right.
And with that said, the aphorism for general semantics is that the map is not its territory, is not the territory. The American flag is a symbol of America. The sidewalk in Philadelphia, and it could be Detroit, it could be Las Vegas, it could be any place you want, is actually part of America. If you have a leader who on stage hugs the American flag and talks about how much he loves America, but at the same time gives the green light to an oil drilling project that despoils our natural wonders, you might be doing something wrong there.
Right.
Right.
So, but symbols come to mean whatever we want them to mean, right? I mean,
Right.
we could have that argument about what does the what does the Confederate flag stand for? What does it mean? Well,
Right.
the real question is, what does it mean to you, and what does it mean to me, right? Because it could be two
Exactly.
completely different things.
Exactly.
And that's something that people have a hard time. We leave out that part of the sentence.
Right.
When somebody says, well, to me it means the glory of the glory of the South, of the history
Right.
of my people, and somebody else says, well, to me it means the enslavement and degradation of my people.
Yeah.
They're both right. Right. That said, symbols take on a power in and of themselves. I mean, come on. When I said that thing about spitting on the American flag, you knew
Right.
I was kidding.
Yeah.
But it also actually brings up a response, right?
Sure.
So those are things that we think about. And
It puts
again,
things back into. I was just saying, it puts things back into perspective, really,
Sure.
because those aren't things that we think of. And it's like, wait a minute, if you, any country that you're in, like we have actually a couple of people from, or at least one from the UK and one from Canada, I know for sure, that are watching this. And, it's like, if you love the country that you're living in, like you said, and the flag is a very strong symbol of the country. It is a symbol. But if you only protect that symbol, what is your love really about?
Well, so I would ask you this question. You guys know that the American flag that we have today isn't the same one that they had in 1776, right?
Exactly.
Right.
Yep.
Um, um, how does the Gadsden flag, come into this, right? The "Don't Tread on Me."
Mhm.
In one of the, I could not make this stuff up. One of the protesters that died during the January 6th insurrection was
Mhm.
actually holding a Gadsden flag when she was trampled by the crowd. She
Right.
was holding a flag that said "Don't tread on
Don't
me"
tread on me.
when they walked on her.
Wow.
You couldn't make this stuff up.
Wow.
It shouldn't surprise me anymore, but it's for some reason it does. That people will hold on to certain things that historically really don't have too much of a context in modern time. For
Mhm.
example, the Gadsden flag. If memory serves me right, and please feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. Um, it was during before we even became a country, while we were revolting against the British. Correct?
Yep.
So
And
now
it was a state flag. Red, New Hampshire? New Hampshire? It was
I
one.
think so. I think
Yeah.
so. But now people are using it completely out of context, which uh, reminds me of the days in the movement of more especially groups like the Ku Klux Klan, for example, will take biblical verses and whatnot and really twist it to fit their message, if you will.
Sure.
Yep.
Absolutely.
I see a lot of the neo Nazis will use Nordic symbolism from Norse mythology to try to further their agenda. And it's like, well, if you guys actually read any of these so-called holy books, you'll know that there's not an ounce of hate in them.
So I gotta tell you this. I was privileged to go on a trip to Iceland.
Nice.
And we did a whole tour. I'll tell you my big takeaway from that is that if they ever make alcoholism like an Olympic event, just give Iceland the medals. I mean, don't even bother competing. It's just the bars in Iceland are open till 5 a.m. Right?
Oh, wow.
Um, so at one point they had closed the bars down at 2 a.m.
Mhm.
And the birth rate increased dramatically. Make of that what you will. Um, but so we did this whole tour, and one of the things that we did is Iceland is heated by geothermal, so they're
Right.
really involved with the volcano and stuff. And so the tour guide, and I wish I could do it because he did this in an absolutely flat voice. In about the year 1000, the Vikings had a big debate whether they were going to stay pagan, worshiping Odin and Thor, or
Right.
convert to Christianity.
Right.
And they held a thing moot. They held this big I'm sure a lot of drinking was involved in it. And they decided that they were going to convert to Christianity, that Christianity was going to become the official religion of Iceland.
Wow.
And everybody had to convert. He pauses then for effect and then continues by saying, and then the volcano erupted.
That's insane.
Yeah.
From what I did catch, and I apologize for having to jump on late. From what I did catch of the presentation, I hope that the people that do see this, that it speaks volumes because there are so many isms out there, such as socialism, nationalism, etc. And unfortunately, it seems as it seems as if it's getting worse.
I'm not sure about that. I mean, again, let me tell you a little bit of why I spend so much time reading and researching history. It gives you perspective.
Absolutely.
So we just suffered this worldwide pandemic, and more than 500,000 people dead in the United States. I mean,
Right.
losses that are terrible, and in the millions worldwide.
Absolutely.
And we don't really know how many people died. There's a thing they call the delta. If you figure out how many people died in the same amount of time in the prior time, and then you compare that to the difference, you get a much higher number, right?
Right.
Somebody once said that ultimately the cause of death is always put down as heart failure, because when you die, your heart stops. Right? I mean.
Right.
So that said, we lived through this terrible time when the Black Death hit France. 1/4 of the people in that country died.
Wow.
So yeah, one out of 4.
I knew it was a lot. I just didn't realize it was that much. Wow.
Yeah, and they didn't know. I mean, they didn't know how to take. They didn't know how to take any precautions for it. The same thing has happened in multiple places. Places like the Lower East Side in New York was a hotbed of cholera,
Right.
and when cholera hit the area, they didn't stop drinking the contaminated water.
Right.
They just didn't know, and that's how they kind of figured out that the disease was being transmitted. I mean, there's that stuff, but let me also go back and say, it's hard to get perspective. Right before Charlottesville, I was talking to a friend of mine, and she was really concerned about the Unite the Right march, right? And I kind of was being, I don't know, optimistic. I was saying, oh, come on, it's not going to be Nuremberg. And then I look at the television set and I see a bunch of guys marching with tiki torches.
Right.
Chanting "Jews will not replace us." Although I will let you know, replacing them was not on my agenda. I mean, I just, I got enough of a hard time being me, let alone trying to be somebody else.
Right.
Exactly.
Those are kind of my thoughts on the topic. Are there? I'm trying to look at the comments. Are there any questions?
Yeah, absolutely. Anybody, if anybody has any questions, feel free to throw them in chat.
Yeah,
I mean, that's
absolutely.
what this is here for. It's a conversation. And
So I see Mila from the UK says it feels like isms are becoming more harsh towards their agenda, and
Yes.
and I can understand how we have that feeling. I'll also tell you, so there are a couple of things on that. First of all, we have greater sensitivity, right? Nobody was live streaming. Nobody was live streaming Nazi Germany,
Right.
right? So there was a sense until the late 40s. We really didn't know. We suspected, but we really didn't know how bad it was. I mean, we knew more
Right.
than we let on, but we just didn't know it all. So today, right? Today it would have been on cell phones. It would have been streamed. So we
Right.
have a heightened awareness. The other part that I will say to Mila is that you have to be aware of the algorithm. And
Yes.
Red, this was the conversation that you and I were having.
Yep. Absolutely.
If you click on one thing, Facebook and Twitter will show you more things
Yes.
like that.
Yes, absolutely. And unfortunately, I how do I say this appropriately? Bear with me. I think our media nowadays has gotten very good at what could be called fear mongering.
So you guys know that I'm in business. Night Dive Studios.
Right.
We make video games. So I'm a businessman. I'm
Sure.
all about the sales, right?
Absolutely.
I'm not sure that it's necessarily fear mongering.
Okay.
Maybe it is, but it's what sells.
Right. Sensationalism. It sells. Absolutely. Music. People who make music have been doing that for years. Bands like Slayer, for example, who aren't exactly a quote unquote satanic band, but their lyrics contain the Antichrist and satanic imagery within the lyrics, and it sells. And they made a very lucrative career out of that.
In my day, we had much more refined music, just a little bit of Ozzy Osbourne, and then that young kid Marilyn Manson.
Oh yeah,
it's a theme of mine also that if you live long enough, you will hear the music, the rebel music of your youth being played in an elevator on your way to your dentist's office.
Yep, I've heard it in the grocery stores even, and I'm like, holy cats! This was my jam back in high school. Now it's playing in the dang grocery store. What in the world,
I'll tell you, it was a short-lived television series, but the idea that Henry Rollins has emerged as a mainstream TV sensation is a little bit jarring for me. So
right.
I'm waiting for the day that I turn on my set and I realize that guy that's doing the commercial message for some laxative or something is Jello Biafra from the Dead Kennedys.
Oh yeah, no kidding.
Right.
Good grief. So, to all of our viewers out there who are tuning in, listening in, etc., first and foremost, thank you so much for tuning in tonight, guys. We understand that this is a very heavy topic for really anybody. I mean, let's face it, this is. However, we don't share these topics to try to trigger anybody, to try to intentionally harm or put anybody in any sort of mental discomfort. We do this to educate, okay? And part of education can be painful, folks. We have in America a very dark history. And if we do not learn from it, if we try to erase it and try to just shove it away in a little box, we're going to be doomed to repeat it. And with today's technology, it can be 10 times more catastrophic than what came to fruition, less than a century ago.
Yep.
Right.
So I want to encourage all of you to have an open dialogue with us, with your friends, with whoever, and understand, please, that this is not an attempt to harm anybody.
So there are a couple of things on that. So Mila asked, what's the most interesting time of American history to research and look up? That depends on what you're really interested in.
Right.
The things that I find the period of time that I find most interesting is begins with from 1917 until 1945. So it spans the period of America entering World War I,
right,
and leaving World War II. Let me also say that if you want to understand, too often when we start looking at the rise of Nazi Germany, we don't begin with World War I,
right,
and that's probably the place that we really need to start. So Germany went into World War I. We always start off with the assassination of the Archduke Ferdinand, and that conflict, and that's interesting. But the world that was the spark. The powder keg was already in place before then. So Germany was very upset because England and France were getting more space, had more turf in the colonial world, specifically in Africa. And Germany said that they wanted their place in the sun. I mean, that was literally what was said.
Sure.
And that also speaks. It was the end of World War I that set the stage for World War II.
Absolutely.
So that's a period that I find really, really interesting. I'm going to also say if there's one book that I would recommend to you, it's not purely a history book, but it certainly covers a whole lot of history, and it's really statistically oriented. Is a book called Sapiens, Sapiens, by Haribi. So we talked about how things seem to be getting worse in the world. Let me tell you some stuff about the world and about Haribi takes at one point one of the most violent years in recent times. I think it was 2015.
Yes.
So the war is going on in Syria. And there are other wars that we don't pay any attention to going on, mostly in Africa and some in Asia, and we don't really care about those things because no oil involved, right?
Right.
So he adds up the number of people that were killed in those conflicts, and it's a not insignificant number. It's like 50,000, which was the death toll in Vietnam.
Wow.
And then he throws into that all the people that were killed in terrorist incidents,
Right.
Al Qaeda and this bombing and that bombing. He adds that up there, and then he says, that's nothing compared to the number of people that die from violent crime.
Right.
All right. So you're more likely to get killed in Buenos Aires, in Detroit, in Flint, right, than you are in Beirut if you do it just statistically, right?
Right.
Okay, and he adds up those numbers and he comes up with this awful number that 350,000 people died in this 350,000 people died in this 1 year of violence. That same year, 1.5 million people died worldwide from diabetes.
Right.
So it's not the gunpowder that's going to kill you. It's the sugar.
Right. And so there's so many places, and I think a lot of people will use social media as the one all beat all, if you will, of fact. A lot of people have. I remember when I was in college, when we wrote a paper, we had to cite our sources. So we had to. Basically, that was what fact checking was back in the day for some of you younger guys and gals out there. If we had a source, we had to go back and trace where did that source come up with its information.
Yep.
And it was a bit of a tedious task, but believe me, the time you take to do that is worth it. A lot of times, especially in the age of technology, and I could be wrong, there is a lot of clickbait.
Sure.
To throw you down that rabbit hole. So all you're going to see is what you want to see or what they want you to see. So I encourage any of you who want to research things, please do your proper research and dig a little deeper.
So again, I don't want this to get too heavy. Let me lighten it up just a little bit. My youngest, my daughter, just got engaged. So
awesome. Congrats.
Cool. Yep. But when she was graduating high school, she went to an alternative high school in Ann Arbor, community high school in Ann Arbor, otherwise known as Commie High. I didn't make that up, but I love it. So she went to Commie High, and at that high school, when you graduate, they allow you. I mean, everybody gets to make a little speech.
Sure.
So she gets up there to the podium and she starts off by saying, "All my life I wanted to be somebody. Now here I am," which is a quote from Susie Quattro.
Yep.
So she was her daddy's daughter, and at the end of it, she says, "I would like to thank the two influences without which I would not be here today." And her mom and I kind of look at each other, and we're like all teary-eyed. And then my daughter continues, "Google and Wikipedia."
Right.
One of the things that Wikipedia does really well is if you look at an article on Wikipedia, and I use Wikipedia a lot as source material, there are all of those little numbers that tell you where Wikipedia got that from. So they do exactly what you're saying, Red. They cite their original sources.
So forgive my ignorance here with Wikipedia.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that could be edited by virtually anybody. So how can that be a reputable?
So I'll answer that. First of all, Red, you can stand up and yell fire in a crowded movie theater, but I have the right to stand up next to you and go, "No, there isn't."
Right.
So while your edits do not necessarily get accepted, nor
Gotcha.
are they vetted. That said, statistically, and again, I'm a big stats guy. Statistically, over and over again, including by surveys that were done by the encyclopedia companies, Wikipedia has been shown to be as accurate as Encyclopedia Britannica or any of the other, what we would consider more scholarly sources.
Right.
That said, it always pays to check the facts and to look at them. I will tell you a thing about fake news and my role in it. And this is really embarrassing. And I don't think my camera's good enough, but I'm blushing under this. So I was doing a paper on the Jewish influence on the internet, and I cited a whole bunch of people, and and I get up to this was years ago, and I found an article about so-called hidden Jews, about people that are of Jewish heritage, but that either are unaware of it or and there's a whole branches of stuff on that. Niels Bohr, the famous physicist, his dad was a Lutheran minister, but one of his grandparents was Jewish. And supposedly, the news comes to him that they were coming to get him because he was of Jewish heritage, and that's how he fled to the United States. Regardless of that, there have been hidden Jews. There have been people who do not acknowledge their own Jews. Most famous on there, Karl Marx. Right, Karl Marx was a self-hating Jew. He comes from a family of rabbis, but he was an the father of communism.
Yes, okay.
Right, the same guy that talked about the rights of workers, but didn't actually ever have a job himself, because he was writing important stuff. Anyway, I'm not bitter, but there you go. But so I'm doing this research, and I find this article about this famous guy that the author thinks may be Jewish, and the article sounded reasonable to me. It quoted some facts, and I do a preliminary fact check, and so I posted in my article that Elon Musk came from a Jewish family. Elon Musk did not come from a Jewish family. The article was completely wrong. And in fact, the source of that was that his Mama Musk, had worked at a Jewish-owned nursing home, and that was the entire association there.
Okay.
However, for years after that, anytime somebody typed in the words Elon Musk Jewish, they came to my article.
Wow. Okay.
And the internet never forgets. So there you go about fact checking. There you go.
Huh.
That is really cool.
Absolutely.
So again, I see you guys have posted the links. I post everything that I have done onto LarryKuperman.com. I will also share it. The last presentation that I did that was on lighter matter, which was about the roots of rock and roll. I was wearing my famous Ramones T-shirt for that one.
Yes.
But I'm probably the only one that writes up an article on rock and roll and had half a page of references at the end of it. So
that's awesome.
So there you go.
It was really
guys.
awesome.
I'm available. We will talk more. But thank you so much for having me on as a guest.
Thank you for coming.
So much for coming on, Larry. We really, really appreciate it. And anytime you want to come on, you're more than welcome.
Absolutely.
I'll have to figure out something relevant for next time around.
There we go. You always do, though. You always have something. It was Mila that came into chat tonight, was asking, what it was about, because he was hearing the history and stuff. And I said that you'd been on other times before and that you're really good with history, but you're always looking for ways to bring the history into it and look at how it relates to what we're dealing with today in society and what we can learn from it.
Exactly.
So we appreciate it very much. I love it.
Thank you so much.
All right. It was
Cheers.
good to-
And again, last thing, if you know anybody that's still in the movements, anybody that has not come out, they probably, if they only need to know about one thing, tell them about Ernst Röhm.
Yes.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Cheers,
Definitely.
everybody.
That
Have a
way.
good night.
Thank
Cheers.
you. You too. Well, thank you guys for joining us tonight.
Yes, thank you so
Any
much.
thoughts, Red?
Wow. There are numerous thoughts. I want to go back to a statement that I made a few minutes ago, and that is, if anybody is, I'm sorry, everybody. I hate the word triggered. Okay, I do. I despise the
It
word.
triggers you.
However, right. If this presentation has upset you in any way, shape, or form, please know that this was not an intentional ploy to bring harm or anything like that upon anybody. This is simply an educational tool here at Underground Media and Beyond Barriers. Coffee Conversation, hashtag the more you know, everything else in between. We want to educate everybody. We want you to know factual information instead of
Absolutely.
BS. All right. Now, with that being said, if there are any questions that anybody has, feel free to reach out to us.
Absolutely.
You know, you can message us on the various platforms that we stream on. You know, we're here to answer those questions, and that's what we encourage. We encourage this open dialogue. That is something that I think we have started to miss in today's society, and to be able to have that open dialogue has just been phenomenal. So
Absolutely. And real quick, Red,
Yeah.
Captain Canada was wondering where Bart was at.
That's a good question, Captain, and I don't know. Unfortunately, they've gone AWOL, and I've lost track of them. And you know, I dropped the ball on that one. I've just been buried in paperwork. So, you know.
And Mila was saying the issue with presenting history is that it will upset someone, and that is true because not all history is
Sunshine and rainbows.
daisies and exactly. But that's the thing, you know, we have to learn from it, and unfortunately, in today's society, in the society of cancel culture, we
Right.
forget that history is there to learn from.
Exactly.
We have to see the mistakes in order to be able to learn from them.
And I think that's where Mr. Kuperman made a good point about people that are being too soft. Okay. And it's true, folks. Friends, listen, it's understandable that something upsets you and that something offends you. So you're offended. We get it. All right. But if we try to erase our past, you can't. Period. Okay. We're gonna get one thing straight. You cannot erase something that has already happened. All right.
Yep.
And by trying to do so, you are robbing not only yourselves but other people the opportunity to learn from those past mistakes. All right. Those who do not learn from the past are doomed to repeat it. And it's not going to be pretty when it does happen. Okay, guys. To educate yourself is to essentially arm yourself with knowledge. All right. That is to face the dark past that we all that our country has suffered. All right. I have a past. I don't like having to face it, but I have to.
Right.
In order to learn from it and become all right. So you're not wrong. People will be offended. People will be upset by history, and that's okay. What's not okay is to dwell on that feeling and to try to make others suffer because you are feeling a certain way, right? So acknowledge the feeling, acknowledge the anger, acknowledge the hurt, but then move on from it. Don't make other people suffer because you are suffering.
Sorry, you can't hear it on your end right now.
Yeah.
But Captain Canada did the please God no sound alert.
Oh boy.
It didn't play on your end, Captain Canada? Oh, it did. Okay. It's a little bit slow, but I got him to play this time.
Okay.
I figured you'd get a kick out of that.
Oh, absolutely.
And then real quick also, guys, please hit the like and subscribe button. Please,
Yes.
please, please. And then also for all of you, hey, Cubana, how you doing? What's poppin'? We are actually just rounding up for the night. Captain Canada is making sure all of my my sounds work. That's awesome. Oh, am I? Oh, that's really loud. Hold on. How's that? Is that better? No echo now? Maybe? It's okay, Cubano. Sorry, let me think. The VOD will be up, and then I'll also have it in a podcast form also, in like the next day or two, and it'll be available on Spotify too. But yeah, we talked about nationalism. The other god that failed was tonight's theme for Coffee and a Conversation, and Larry Kuperman joined us for tonight. But I'm still glad that you stopped in. I really appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Absolutely.
And yeah, any of the past episodes, guys, will be on my VODs for my Twitch channel, and then they are slowly being uploaded eventually to YouTube, and then also to my Spotify, so that you'll be able to have them in podcast form if you would like. We will be back on Tuesday for more conversation and coffee. If you guys have any suggestions, any topics that you would like to hear, hashtag the more you know. We also have typically on Thursdays, we did a special conversation and coffee this week to have Larry on, but typically Tuesdays is conversation and coffee, and Thursdays is hashtag the more you know. Thursdays we typically go over mental health awareness, because that is something that individuals, all of humanity deals with to some degree. And it's something that we need to have less of a stigma about. It's got a very negative stigma, and sometimes you need help, and that's okay.
Right.
And
Absolutely.
it's okay to say that.
Now, so for Coffee and Conversation, guys, if y'all remember, we did have Captain Canada on live with us as a guest. If you want to be a guest, hit us up. Let us know. If you got suggestions, again, let us know. We're here. We want to continue to make these episodes fun and entertaining, if nothing else. So
absolutely, that's part of what it's about. I mean, you can't be serious all the time. You can, but you can't. And
say that again.
I said you can't be serious all the time.
Yeah, you're not wrong. Yeah, but that gets kind of crappy after a while. It
gets kind of dreary and depressing.
Yeah.
From what I hear, laughter is one of the best medicines. So
that's right. Dreary and depressing like a Midwest winter.
Hey.
I didn't have to shovel snow this year, so I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, Mr. Florida. Mr. Florida.
Yep.
And let's see here. Actually, all right. Yeah. Sorry. Just checking on everything. Yes, you are right, Cubana. We have to stay happy as much as we can.
Absolutely.
Once again, thank you all for joining us tonight, and tune in next week for more Coffee and a Conversation and hashtag the more you know. Please leave in the comments and in the chat or DM us. Please let us know what other conversations you'd like to have.
Yes.
And because that's what we're about. We're about creating dialogue, and sometimes it means having conversations that we don't want to have.
Absolutely.
But, we're all in this together, guys. So let's work at it together.
That's right.
So